Before we begin, I thought it would be fun if everyone lets me know in the comments where they're watching this video from. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's start today's episode. Beth Doe. On December 20th, 1976, a dismembered female body was discovered in Carbon County, Pennsylvania, near Interstate 80 by the Lehigh River. The woman had been sexually assaulted, strangled, and, in what some investigators described as excessive, shot in the neck after her death. The autopsy revealed that she was 9 months pregnant, and her nearly full-term unborn child had also perished during the attack. The body had been dismembered with a serrated knife. Her ears, nose, and breasts were severed and remain missing to this day. The rest of her dismembered parts were found in 3 suitcases, along with the fetus, which had been removed prior to the dismemberment. 2 of the suitcases were striped in red, blue, and white, while the third was tan with a plaid pattern. The handles of the suitcases had been removed and seemed to have been spray-painted black. 1 suitcase contained her torso, the second her arms and legs, and the third held her head and fetus. Police believe that the suitcases were thrown from a moving vehicle into the Lehigh River, with the killer likely hoping they would sink. However, 1 suitcase washed up on the riverbank. A 14-year-old boy discovered it while playing near the water's edge. The police quickly located the other 2 suitcases about 20 feet away in the woods. The body was then transported to Nathan Houghton Hospital for further examination. On December 23, 1976, after a 3-hour examination, it was determined that the victim was a white female, likely in her late teens or early 20s. She was pregnant with a daughter, who seemed to have been due any day before her tragic death. Her identity remained unknown, and she was given the name Beth Doe by the authorities. Her fingerprints were taken and submitted to the FBI, but they didn't match anyone in the national database. Her dental records were also examined and filed. A composite sketch of the victim was made and was distributed throughout the country. However, no credible leads could be found. Before I continue, I want to remind you that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Now let's move on with the video. She was buried in 1983 under the name Beth Doe. In February 2007, her body was exhumed for further forensic analysis and a new facial reconstruction was also made. However, police were unable to match it to any missing person. In November of 2020, Beth Doe's DNA was entered into a public database of genetic genealogy. Soon, familial DNA eventually led investigators to the victim's nephew, Luis Colon Jr. Luis put police in touch with other family members, including the victim's brother. On March 31, 2021, Beth Doe was finally identified as Evan Colon. In 1976, Evelyn was living with her then-boyfriend, 19-year-old Luis Sierra. Her family said in 1976, when Evelyn was 8 or 9 months pregnant with Luis's baby, they lost all contact with her. They said that in December of 1976, they had visited Evelyn's apartment in Jersey City, New Jersey, where she stayed with Luis, but after reaching the apartment, they found it abandoned and they soon received a letter stating that the couple had moved to Connecticut and that Evelyn had delivered her daughter and was happy. The letter said that she would contact them if she needed anything. The family, thinking Evelyn had decided to live her own life, did not file a missing persons report. The family told investigators that Luis was abusive and jealous towards Evelyn and often kept her locked inside the apartment. Evelyn even told her mother that she feared Luis and that if anything happened to her, then Luis was likely involved. After years of uncertainty for both investigators and her family, Evelyn's body was finally marked with her true identity. This identification also revealed the name of her unborn daughter, who, though never given the chance to live, had already been lovingly named by her mother. The name chosen for her in happier times was Emily Grace, and she was given a place next to her mother's name on the gravesite, her first and only home. Luis was arrested and charged with murder. At the time of his arrest, he was 63 years old and living in Ozone Park, New York. He is currently being held without bail and is awaiting extradition to Pennsylvania for Evelyn's murder. No additional information about his arrest has been released to the public. Moving on to the next case. Brittany McGlone. 19-year-old Brittany McGlone lived in East Texas in February 2007. She worked 2 jobs to save money for college, planning to attend Baylor University to study nursing. One of her jobs was at the Lowe's distribution center in Mount Vernon. On the morning of May 4, 2007, after finishing her overnight shift, Brittany drove to her boyfriend Jeff Stogner's house in Winsboro, Texas, to get some sleep. At the time, Jeff and his family, who also lived there, were away giving someone a ride to the airport. Brittany's mother tried calling her multiple times that day but received no response. Concerned, she reached out to Jeff, who had just returned home. He told her that Brittany's car was still in the driveway before they ended the call. Jeff went into the house, found Brittany's body on his bed and called 911. She'd been assaulted and beaten with an unknown object. An autopsy ruled that the cause was massive head trauma. Many people were questioned by detectives, including Jeff and his family, but no suspects have been publicly named. Brittany's sister, Hope, had a lot to say about Brittany's character. No matter what kind of day she was having, Brittany could always find the silver lining. Her bright smile, goofy sense of humor, and positive outlook on life would spread to the ones she was with, making it impossible for anyone to have a bad day. She didn't deserve this, Hope said. She was this innocent, pure person who never did anything wrong, never got into trouble. She always saw the good in people and just loved life. Why would someone do this to her? Hope has publicly said that her family have their theories about who took Brittany's life, but remain open to any and all possibilities. Among the possibilities is a man known by Jeff Stogner's family, who was questioned early in the investigation. The man has a lengthy criminal record with prior charges for burglary, assault and assault with a weapon. In 2021, Wood County Sheriff Kelly Cole said there is plenty of evidence, like bloodstains and DNA, from the scene that they plan to retest now the DNA technology is more advanced. On September 1, 2022, the Wood County Sheriff's Office in Texas shared an update on Facebook regarding Brittany's case. They announced that on August 31st, an arrest warrant had been obtained, leading Captain Mike Chilson and Ranger John Vance to travel to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where they arrested Chad Earl Carr. Brittany's family had long suspected Carr's involvement. He is currently being held in the Wood County Jail with bonds set at $1 million. Following the arrest, Brittany's family expressed their emotions in a Facebook post, stating, "Asterisk. Never did I think this day would come. 15 years later, and it has." Asterisk. They also took a moment to thank Sheriff Cole. However, they emphasized that this was only the beginning. Moving on to the next case. Carlina Renee White. Carlina Renee White was born on July 16, 1987, in New York City to parents Joy White and Carl Tyson. On August 4th of that same year, when Carlina was just 19 days old, her parents took her to the hospital due to a fever. While there, a woman dressed as a nurse comforted them, but she was not actually a hospital employee. Her name was in Petway. She devised a plan to pose as a nurse so she could abduct a baby. Having suffered multiple miscarriages, Petway realized she was unable to conceive. At 2:30 a.m., shortly after Carlina's parents brought her to the hospital, Petway removed the infant's fore and kidnapped her. Although the hospital had video surveillance, it was not functioning at the time. As a result, the only available description of the suspect came from Joy White and Carl Tyson. A security guard later reported seeing a woman matching the description leave the hospital at 3:30 a.m. While no baby was visible, it was possible the infant had been concealed. Infant was visible, but the baby could have been covered up. The abduction of Carlina White became known as the very first known infant abduction from a New York hospital. Carlina was raised as Nedra Natty Nance by Petway in Bridgeport, Connecticut. This was about 45 miles from where her parents lived. Carlina attended Thomas Hooker School and graduated from Warren Harding High School. Petway and Carlina later moved to Atlanta, Georgia. Carlina did grow suspicious in her teens that Petway was not her biological mother because she was not able to provide a birth certificate. In February 2005, Carlina was pregnant. She asked Petway to give her the birth certificate so that she could apply for health insurance. Petway then obtained a forged Connecticut birth certificate. When Carlina attempted to use it, the officials told her that it was a forged document. When confronted by Carlina, Petway finally confessed that she was not her biological mother. Petway did not tell the entire truth, however. She told Carlina that she had been abandoned by a drug addict. When Carlina was 23 years old, she used websites such as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There, she found images of the kidnapped Carlina White that resembled infant photos of herself as Nedra and those of her daughter, Simone. Carlina decided to call the center's hotline and was able to get into contact with her birth family. In February, DNA tests confirmed that she was the missing Carlina White. After the confirmation that Nedra Nance was really Carlina White, the Federal Bureau of Investigation began a search for Petway. Petway turned herself into the FBI office at Bridgeport on the morning of February. Petway admitted to federal investigators that she had abducted Carlina after suffering multiple miscarriages, driven by the fear that she might never become a mother. In February, the 50-year-old was sentenced to 12 years in prison. The judge condemned her actions as selfish, stating that she had inflicted a parent's worst nightmare. Petway served her sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Aliceville, Alabama, before being released in February. Carlina's reunion with her biological parents was far from smooth. Disputes arose over financial matters, her desire to continue being called Nettie, and the love she still felt for Petway. However, based on the most recent public updates, it appears that Carlina has reconciled with her parents, and they are now on good terms. Moving on to the next case. Carol and Stevens. On April 7, 1959, 6-year-old Carol Ann Stevens was sent to a shop near her home on Milford Street in Cardiff to buy sweets for herself and cigarettes for her mother, Mavis. Shortly after noon, she walked to the shops on Dogfield Street and returned home a short time later. After handing over the cigarettes, she hurried back out, telling her mother she was going to play. Mavis simply reminded her not to stay out too late and thought nothing of it at the time. However, Carol never came home that day. While speaking with police later, Mavis recalled her daughter's eagerness to leave again, almost as if she had a prearranged plan that prompted her to rush back outside. Alarmed, Mavis and her husband, Ken, reported her missing, and a search was launched. Carol's family described her as a confident, happy, and energetic child. Unlike many children her age, she had no fear of talking to strangers, an aspect that deeply concerned investigators, who feared the worst. The Stevens family was well known in town, regarded as friendly and hardworking. For 2 weeks, authorities searched both the city and the surrounding areas, questioning pedestrians and drivers while issuing multiple appeals for information. Then, on April 21st, Carol's body was discovered in a 20-foot deep ravine near Horeb, a small hamlet located 60 miles from her home and 5 miles north of the town of Llanelli. Investigators determined that she had been deceased for at least a week. Her body had been hidden beneath overhanging branches and leaves. She was still wearing the clothes she had last been seen in, except her skirt had been pulled down to her ankles, and her shoes were missing. One shoe was found 5 feet away, while the other was located 15 feet downstream. Tragically, Carol had been sexually assaulted. The absence of physical injuries suggested to investigators that she had not been thrown into the ravine. Additionally, an examination of her stomach and intestines found no traces of poison. Given the secluded nature of the hamlet, authorities suspected that the person responsible for dumping her body was familiar with the area. All employees at a nearby brickworks factory were interviewed, and extensive inquiries were conducted along the 60-mile route between Llanelli and Cardiff. Hundreds of motorists and commercial drivers were questioned, and fields and farming communities in the area were searched. Scotland Yard assisted with the investigation, which involved interviewing over 10,000 people, searching 3,000 vehicles, and taking more than 1,100 statements. Investigators became increasingly concerned after speaking with children who reported being invited for a ride by various drivers. Police assured the public that these claims were thoroughly investigated. In the weeks after the 6-year-old's disappearance, investigators spoke with several witnesses who had seen the girl approaching a green vehicle on different occasions. One witness reported seeing her approach a car parked at the corner of Robert Street and Fair Oak Road, where an adult male was inside, either reading or writing on some papers. Police later tried to trace the owner of a small green saloon car she had been seen in about a week before her disappearance. Another witness recalled seeing her get out of a green saloon car near her home, but found it strange that she had been dropped off at the corner of her street rather than directly in front of her house. A teenager also reported seeing a dark-haired man wearing a trench coat and a brimmed hat sitting in the car, reading papers. In the weeks before she disappeared, Carol told friends that she had a new uncle who took her for lovely rides in his motor car. Around this time, a neighbor told Mavis that she had seen a strange man peering over their back garden wall and into the young girl's bedroom the night before she vanished. One of Carol's friends had a hobby that police quickly became interested. He took down and collected the license plate numbers of cars. Authorities thought he might have noted down the plate of the green car, but this was a dead end as he did not record the number of this specific vehicle. After the discovery of Carol's body, police noted it was obvious she didn't walk to Linley, and a nationwide campaign was launched to warn children of the dangers of interacting with strangers and telling them not to get into cars with them. It was thought that the recent explosion of car ownership in the UK was leading to an increase in people using vehicles to abduct children. On Friday, April 24th, just days after the 6-year-old's body was recovered from the ravine, about 300 people gathered in front of Linley Police Station after a rumor circulated that a man had been brought in for questioning in relation to the case. However, the police announced that there was no truth to that gossip. The inquest into Carol's demise concluded on July 1st of 1959 with a verdict of murder by some person or persons unknown. Her cause of death was never fully disclosed. During an earlier hearing, it has been reported that she suffocated, although it added that there were no apparent injuries and little evidence to indicate cause of death. At the time of the murder, authorities had no persons of interest. Early in the investigation, they had for a short time suspected that Carol's biological father, James Lynch, had been involved. James and Mavis had divorced when their daughter was only 2 years old, and James had moved to London afterwards, although he reportedly wished to have full custody of Carol. James, however, was quickly ruled out of the investigation as he had an alibi confirming that he was in London during the time that Carol had been taken and killed. The case went cold for decades afterwards until November of last year, when it was confirmed that the case was being re-examined by former detectives and crime experts led by former Police Chief Constable Jackie Roberts. Around the same time, they announced that they had a new suspect, although he was now deceased. Ronald Edward Murray had been brought to the team's attention after they discovered that his name was mentioned in the memoir of Police Detective Superintendent Roy Davis, who had worked on the case back in 1959. Murray was an Australian man who had moved to the United Kingdom after the Second World War. Neighbors described him as a charismatic man who lied frequently. Murray had worked as a traveling sweets salesman in 1959, had links to both Cathy's, Cardiff, and Laneley, and had previously worked in one of the brick factories in the hamlet where Carol was found. Reportedly, Murray was questioned at the time of Carol's disappearance. He told the police a story about how he wasn't feeling well and had hit a dog with his car. After putting the canine into his vehicle, he drove home. But upon returning to his house, the dog fled. Murray apparently spent some time afterwards searching for the dog. Despite this flimsy alibi, he was not looked into any further. Murray's employer gave workers a company car, which was a green Morris Minor, while a recent BBC documentary revealed that the man had requested more lines of sweets that were preferred by children. Strangely, Murray's wife, Della, passed away a decade later in 1969. He found her lifeless in the living room and largely blamed their son for her death. Murray told investigators that he often played a prank on the boy by turning off the gas and asking him to make tea, teasing him about not being able to do so because he couldn't get the gas to work. During the inquest, Murray suggested that his son had tried to pull the same prank on someone else but accidentally left the gas on, leading to Della's death. Despite this explanation and the fact that Della's death was ruled accidental, police remained suspicious of Murray's involvement, with some even speculating he might have been connected to Carol's murder as well. Sadly, Murray died in Penrith in 1973. He remains the primary suspect in Carol's case, and investigations are still ongoing to determine whether he was responsible for her murder. Carol's case remains unsolved for now. Hundreds of mourners attended her funeral on April 27, 1959. Mavis Stevens passed away in February 2002, never having seen justice for her daughter Carol. If you have any information regarding Carol's murder, you can contact Crime Stoppers at 080051. Moving on to the next case. Christine Susan Monroe. Christine lived in Redding, California, where she worked as a nurse and was a mother to 4 children. At 37 years old, Christine was passionate about running, and in June of 1995, she went for a run on the Sacramento River Trail. When she failed to return home, her family grew concerned and contacted the police. On June 24, 1995, Christine's body was discovered along the trail where she had been running. She had been assaulted and stabbed. Investigators were able to collect DNA evidence from her body, which was crucial to the case. In 1997, 2 years after the crime, a man named Michael Valbic began claiming responsibility for Christine's death. However, investigators quickly determined that he was lying and ruled him out as a suspect. Reading police detective Rusty Bishop began reviewing Christine's case in late 2019. In January of 2020, he resubmitted fingernail scrapings of Christine to the Department of Justice for DNA analysis. In June of 2020, the detective received a notification that a possible match has been made using the CODIS database. It matched the DNA of James Watkins. In August, reading detectives flew to Texas to interview James. He lives in Texas, but he was in Reading, California at the time of the crime. James was just 17 years old when a crime took place. He has been serving a 14-year prison sentence for robbery in a state prison in Beaumont, Texas. The 2 years he spent living in Redding, he had lots of run-ins with the police. Right after he took Christine's life, he moved to Texas to live with his uncle where he continued to commit crimes. DNA samples were taken from James, and in October, it was confirmed that the DNA found under Christine's fingernails matched that of James Watkins. In November, 42-year-old James Watkins was arrested. Christine's daughter, Lisa, spoke at a news conference following the announcement of his arrest. She expressed, "Not a single day goes by that I don't think about the day my mom's life was taken, the manner in which she was taken from us, and the pain this has caused our family. There are simply no words to describe the sadness and grief our family has experienced. She loved the river trail, and I take comfort in knowing she passed away in a place she loved so much." Moving on to the next case. Dana Dodd. The body of a white female, estimated to be between 17 and 25 years old, was discovered on October 29, 2006, in Kilgore, Texas. She had $40 in her pockets, and authorities determined that she had likely passed away between 8:15 p.m. and 10 p.m. the night before. Due to the purple sweater she was wearing, investigators nicknamed her Lavender Doe. A DNA sample from an unidentified male was recovered from her body, providing a crucial lead in the case. As the investigation progressed, local residents began pointing out individuals they found suspicious, prompting further inquiries. In January 2014, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a digital composite image of the unidentified woman. This led the mother of missing 23-year-old Brandy Wells to come forward, believing her daughter might be Lavender Doe. Brandy had vanished after visiting a nightclub in Longview, Texas, in August 2006. However, DNA testing confirmed that Lavender Doe was not Brandy Wells. In August 2018, a man named Joseph Wayne Burnett confessed to police that he was responsible for Lavender Doe's death. He had originally been questioned in February 2007 due to his prior conviction for a similar crime and his residence in the area. However, no charges were filed against him at the time. Also in 2018, the DNA Doe project took on the case to uncover Lavender Doe's true identity. By analyzing her DNA profile, they were able to locate a cousin who also lived in Texas. On February 11, 2019, they announced that Lavender Doe was actually Dana Dodd. Dana had a difficult upbringing. Her mother abandoned her as a baby, and her father was homeless. In early 2006, she left her family behind in Florida and moved to Texas, where she joined a door-to-door magazine sales crew. It is believed that she met Joseph Wayne Burnett while working, which ultimately led to her tragic fate. Moving on to the next case. Gabriel Nagy. Gabriel Nagy lived in Sydney, Australia, with his wife, Pamela, and their 2 children, Stephen and Jennifer. Having immigrated to Australia with his parents as a child, he cherished his life there. A devoted father, Gabriel was deeply respected by his family, who never imagined anything could tear them apart. Unfortunately, something did. Gabriel worked as a shop fitter, helping businesses construct retail spaces throughout the city. However, his true aspiration was to become an accountant, and he was actively taking classes to pursue that goal. On January 21, 1987, he went into the city to take care of some errands. He called Pamela to let her know he would be home for lunch. She prepared a meal and waited for him, but Gabriel never returned. She waited until she received a call that changed her life forever. The police had found the burned-out shell of Gabriel's car on the side of the road. There was no sign of him to be found. Pamela and her 2 children started putting out missing persons flyers all over Sydney. Surely, someone had to know what happened to Gabriel after the car accident. Unfortunately, no one knew. 2 weeks after Gabriel disappeared, the police determined that he withdrew money from a bank in the city of Newcastle. Newcastle is about 100 miles away from Sydney. His family was hopeful about the new lead and believed this would help them find Gabriel. The lead turned into a dead end, however, and the case went cold for 2 more decades. There was a senior constable by the name of Georgia Robinson. She promised herself that she would solve this case. In her last attempt at finding Gabriel, she did just that in 2012. She looked through some files when she came across something interesting. The Medicare system in Australia showed documents that a person named Gabriel Nagy recently underwent eye surgery. The records also showed that the man went by another name, Ron Saunders. Constable Robinson called this man. He told her that the last 2 decades of his life was fuzzy to say the least. He spent most of his time homeless, just wandering from city to city. That was until a pastor by the name of Barry Hayhoe came across Gabriel. The pastor gave Gabriel a job at the church as a caretaker. Gabriel got the name Ron Saunders from a sign for the Queensland Saunders Beach while he was wandering around. His memories slowly came back, so when he got the eye surgery, he gave the name of Gabriel Nagy as well. Robinson flew to where Gabriel was currently living and showed him pictures of his family. More and more of his memories started to come back. Gabriel sustained a severe head injury in the car accident, which triggered a fugue state, causing him to lose all memory of his past life. He described the experience as surreal, as he still couldn't fully recall his family. Though he promised to stay in contact, he couldn't bring himself to move back in with them. This is a photograph of Pamela and their daughter, Jennifer, holding the photo album they showed Gabriel. And here is an image capturing the emotional moment when Gabriel and Jennifer reunited in February 2012. Moving on to the next case. Jennifer Fergate. That evening, at 10:44 p.m., a woman checked into the hotel. She was assigned room 2805 and booked it for a 3-night stay. During check-in, she provided the following details: her name, Jennifer Fergate, and her date of birth, August 23, 1973, indicating she was 21 years old. She also listed her address as Verlaine, Belgium, along with a phone number and the name of a company. Additionally, Jennifer registered a man named Louis Fergate, though the receptionist never saw him. However, another employee later spotted her with a man estimated to be between 25 and 40 years old. It was reported that this man entered the room with her. Strangely, Jennifer was absent from her hotel room for the next 2 days. During her stay, she attempted to call 2 invalid phone numbers in Belgium. 4 days after she checked in, hotel staff realized that she had never provided any payment details. They sent notifications to her room through the hotel's television system, informing her that she had exceeded her credit limit and needed to settle her bill. The final message was acknowledged by someone in the room, who clicked OK on the TV remote, yet no one ever came down to pay. A housekeeper was asked if she had been in Jennifer's room in the last few days. The housekeeper has not, since there was a red "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. A hotel employee then finally went to knock on her door. Immediately after knocking, the employee heard a massive bang coming from the room. It was a gunshot. Fearing for his life, the employee went down the elevator to the security room. He told security what he had heard. The head of security went to Jennifer's room. This was now 15 minutes after the shot was heard. 15 minutes, the door of the room was unsupervised. He found that a door was locked both on the inside and the outside. After finally unlocking the door, he entered the room. An awful smell was detected. The man then saw the body of Jennifer on the bed. She had been shot. The gun was still in her hand. The police arrived on the scene 50 minutes after the gunshot was heard. With the door being locked from the inside as well as the outside, it would mean that Jennifer had to be alone in the room. This caused the police to believe she took her own life. There were some strange details over. The gun was held upside down. Her thumb was on a trigger. No blood or gunshot residue was found on her hand. 2 gunshots were fired, one into a pillow and one into her forehead. All of the labels from her clothing had been removed. The serial number on the gun was also removed and was apparently done very professionally. The police did later manage to track down the factory where it was made, but that never really led them anywhere since they did not know where it was sold or to who. Strangely enough, there were no fingerprints on a gun, which cast more doubt on if the woman did first to herself. It was soon discovered that all of the information she gave when checking in was fake. No Jennifer or Louis Fergate existed. The address she gave also did not exist. If she did take her own life, why would she go through such great lengths to conceal her identity? An autopsy concluded as she was between 25 and 35 years old, not 21 as she claimed. The police questioned everyone that stayed on the same floor as the woman, and by questioning, I mean they just asked if anyone heard or saw anything out of the ordinary. A man who was also from Belgium left opposite Jennifer in room 2804. We know that he was a businessman, and he's referred to as Mr. F. He told investigators that when he checked out, he was asked if he saw or heard anything out of the ordinary regarding the woman. But this was a lie, however. The man checked out the day before the woman's body was found. It is unknown why he would lie about this fact. It's unclear whether the police ever conducted a thorough investigation into him. Inside the hotel room, a bottle of Maine's cologne was discovered, along with a magazine that had a different room number written on it. A single fingerprint was found on the magazine. Surprisingly, it did not belong to Jennifer and was the only identifiable print in the entire room. Other items in the room included a half-eaten plate of food and a few pieces of clothing. Strangely, some of the clothes she had been seen wearing were missing, and their whereabouts remain unknown. The woman had short dark hair and blue eyes, with gold and porcelain dental work. A DNA analysis later confirmed that she was originally from northern Germany. Several hotel employees recalled that she spoke fluent English and German. Many theories suggest that she may have been a spy, but no concrete evidence has ever supported this claim. To this day, her true identity, and the mystery of what really happened to her, remains unsolved. Moving on to the next case. Case title: The Murder of John Mike Reitz. John Mike Reitz, a 48-year-old resident of Lewis and Clark County, Montana, went missing in February. Later that year, in October, his remains were discovered inside plastic bags on the eastern side of McDonald Pass. An autopsy determined that he had been shot twice in the back of the head. Investigators learned that John had ongoing disputes with multiple neighbors before his death. Authorities questioned all of his neighbors but struggled to uncover any substantial leads identifying the perpetrator. However, one individual stood out to investigators: Leon Michael Ford. As one of John's neighbors, Leon frequently argued with him over restricted access to his property due to John's actions. Surveillance footage from a game camera, owned by another neighbor, captured Leon's vehicle on John's property on June 25, 2011. Leon told police that they had reached an agreement regarding the access. It was just a few days later, on the June 28, that John disappeared. Investigators were highly suspicious of Leon, but they could not prove that he was involved with John's life being taken. They did not give up, however, and continued their investigation. Investigators found cable ties at all of the locations that John's remains were found. A specific type of material was last manufactured in February, and investigators were informed that these ties were only distributed to select vendors. During their inquiry, they discovered records from a contractor at a naval air station on the island where Leon worked. Evidence showed that Leon had taken some of these ties from a warehouse, yet there was no record indicating what project they were intended for. Additionally, a review of case files revealed that Leon had provided false information regarding several details during his time in Chile. Authorities also assert that they have definitive proof linking Leon to John's murder, as well as evidence tampering. However, the specifics of this evidence have not yet been disclosed to the public. In September 2020, Leon was apprehended in Washington and subsequently transferred to Montana. His court hearing is scheduled for early 2021. Moving on to the next case. Lila Portress. According to the FBI's National Crime Information Center, by December 2019, there were over 87,000 active missing persons cases, and uniform crime reports indicated that the United States had approximately 250,000 unsolved murders as of 2019. This number increases by about 6,000 each year. Given these staggering figures, it is disheartening to realize that attention is often focused on only a select group of cold cases, when in reality, no case should be overlooked. Every case deserves attention, but unfortunately, many are forgotten. One such case is that of Lila Portress. The story of 28-year-old Lila Portress began on June 27, 1977, when she was last seen at her home on Cynthia Avenue in Tiverton, Rhode Island. Employed at an insurance company in Fall River, Massachusetts, Lila failed to show up for work for several days, and her car remained parked in her driveway for an unusually long time. On June 29th, a concerned neighbor asked Lila's husband to check on her. The front door was locked, but notably, the porch light was on, even though it was midday. Still worried about her safety, the neighbors called the local police department. Inside the house, Lila's TV and all the lights were on, and her pet cats appeared to be left alone. Police discovered her purse, ID, glasses, and contact lenses, leading them to suspect that she may have fallen victim to foul play. There were no signs of a struggle, prompting investigators to theorize that Lila may have left with someone she knew, planning to return later. The only item missing from the house was a set of spare keys. Weeks later, on July 13, 1977, workers discovered Lila's body in a wooded area near William S. Canning Boulevard in Fall River, Massachusetts. Her body was found in thick underbrush about 40 feet from the road, just 3 miles from her home. Lila had been shot to death with a small-caliber weapon, commonly used in hits or execution-style killings. Authorities concluded that she had been killed elsewhere and then disposed of in the woods. Lila was found fully clothed, but it could not be determined whether or not she was sexually assaulted due to the state of decomposition. The spare set of keys which were missing from the home were found on her person. When the case went public, a neighbor came forward to state that they heard screams emanating from her house at around 3 a.m. on the night of the 27th. Investigators also discovered that the last person to see her alive was her boyfriend, who claimed that he'd left the house at around 12 a.m. that night. Over the next year, the police and FBI followed up hundreds of leads and interviewed over 100 people. Several persons of interest were identified, but no one was ever charged in relation to Lila's slaying. Given that her case receives tragically little media coverage, there isn't much known about the investigation following her demise nor her background. What we do know for certain is that Lila moved to Rhode Island in 1972 after marrying a man named William J. Souza. The couple bought a house together but divorced 3 years later. At the time of her passing, Lila had plans to take time off work and head to her home state of Maine, where her father still lived working as an engineer. There are numerous theories circulating about Lila's case, although most of them remain unproven. Local rumors among her coworkers suggested that she may have been having an affair with a police officer, but it's unclear whether any officers were questioned in connection with the case or if there's any truth to this claim. Some have speculated that Lila might have discovered something suspicious at her job, while others have noted the way her execution appeared to be methodical, combined with a small-caliber weapon, leading many to wonder if she was the target of a hit. However, Lila was known to be an extrovert with many friends and a love for stray animals, making it seem unlikely that she would have gotten involved in criminal activity, though it's still a possibility. In 2019, Lila's case was featured on a set of cold case playing cards distributed to prisons across the country. Now more than 4 decades old, her case remains unsolved, though detectives working on it say they are getting closer to finding an answer. Anyone with information regarding Lila's case is urged to contact the Tiverton Police Department at 401-625-6717. Moving on to the next case. Disappearance of Lori Jean Lloyd. Many iconic horror films from the 1980s and 1990s, which helped shape the genre, feature a recurring trope where a babysitter is alone at home and becomes the target of a threat. While these stories are purely fictional, numerous real-life mysteries suggest that such scenarios are not entirely far-fetched. One such case involves Lori Jean Lloyd, the youngest of 5 siblings. Her older sister, Joni, remembers Lori's love for animals, school, and running. However, as she entered her teenage years, her life took a darker turn. She began running away from home, leading to a point where she and her entire family sought counseling together. Lori confided that, as the youngest in the family, she often felt ignored and believed she wasn't receiving enough attention. Although things seemed to improve after counseling, they were far from perfect. In the months before her disappearance, Lori reportedly experimented with drugs, attempted to end her own life, and moved in with Joni after their mother refused to let her paint her bedroom walls black. Despite these struggles, when she went missing in 1976, her family recalled that she had been in good spirits, was doing well in school, and hadn't run away in months. On the night of February 11th, 14-year-old Lori was babysitting her 3-year-old nephew along with a friend at her home in Kettering, Ohio. Her mother, Anita Smith, stopped by to drop off pizza for them and noticed nothing unusual in the house before leaving. However, when Anita returned after midnight, Lori was nowhere to be found. Her friend and nephew were still inside, fast asleep, unaware that Lori had disappeared. Anita woke Lori's friend, who told her that Lori had gone to a nearby 7-Eleven, just 3 blocks away on Annabelle Drive, to buy cigarettes around 11 p.m. The trip should have taken no more than 15 minutes each way. However, when Anita arrived at the convenience store at 3613 Wilmington Pike, employees said they had not seen anyone matching Lori's description that night. Desperate to find her daughter, Anita drove around Kettering searching for any sign of Lori, but there was no trace of her. While a backpack had gone missing from the family home, Lori's belongings still remained. She had left behind her clothing, her private phone book, her Bible, and her handbag. Her bank account was left untouched. There have been few leads in Lori's case over the years. Her family feel that the initial investigation was hampered because the teenager was a known runaway. This is something we often hear on this channel, that the police do not act quick enough when a child has vanished if they have a history of running away. Loved ones have also pointed out that when Lori would take off, she always stayed with friends and called home to check in with her siblings and mother. One of Lori's friends told the police that the teenager planned to meet a boy that night who said he could take her to California. Lori was born in Fontana, California, and her estranged father lived in the States, but he had barely kept in touch with his 5 children since leaving. So family members found it odd that she would go and seek him out. If this boy ever existed, he has never been identified. For years after she vanished, Lori's family traveled to California. They had seen a documentary about the drug angel dust and noticed an extra in the background of one of the shots that resembled Lori. The scene the extra appeared in was filmed in a Santa Monica drug rehabilitation center. The producers of the movie attempted to identify the girl but found that she had not signed a release before filming. She has never been identified or located, and it is unknown if this girl was Lori. The filmmakers, Dave Bell Associates, became interested in the teenager's case after speaking with her family. They decided to create a documentary about missing and runaway youths in a film titled Whatever Happens to Lori Jean Lloyd, which they released in 1981. Although it was shown in 88 cities across the U.S., no useful leads were uncovered. In February 2004, the DOE network reportedly listed Lori as having returned home safe. Her siblings were surprised by the change in case status and contacted the agency, who told them Detective Wolf, spelled W-O-L-F-E or occasionally W-O-O-L-F, from Kettering PD, had been in touch with them to let them know Lori was no longer missing and endangered. This seems to have been caused by poor communication and misinformation, as the teenager has never been seen nor located since she went missing. The most recent update in Lori's case came in 2016 when family members who run the Lori Jean Lloyd Facebook page announced that her dental records matched a Jane Doe who was discovered on April 17, 1976 in Grant County, Kentucky. She had died just days before her nude body was located. Listed on the Doe Network site as 930 UFKY, Jane Doe is described as being between the ages of 13 and 15. Although she was originally thought to be between the ages of 20 and 30, 5'2" and white with light brown long hair. Shorts presumed to have belonged to her were found near the body. According to Lori's family, a detective with the Kettering Police Department had a dentist friend of his look at Lori's dentals and Jane Doe's and believed them to be a match. Despite this apparent confirmation, both case files are still up on several agency websites, and Lori's case has not been listed anywhere as resolved. No news agency has covered the story, and authorities do not appear to have formally announced the supposed match. A DNA match cannot be confirmed because Jane Doe's remains have been lost somewhere in Potter's Field, buried among numerous other unmarked graves. Adding to the confusion, some sources, including the Unidentified Wiki, claim that Jane Doe was mistakenly identified as Lori and that DNA evidence has ruled them out as the same person. In a comment dated May 8, 2022, Lori's family stated that they plan to investigate these claims further. Lori was 14 years old when she disappeared from Kettering, Ohio, on February 11, 1976, after leaving her home on Annabelle Drive to walk to a convenience store on Wilmington Pike. She is described as a white female with long brown hair and brown eyes. At the time she went missing, she was approximately 5 feet tall and weighed between 102 and 110 pounds. She had a noticeable gap between her 2 front teeth and scars on her wrists from a previous suicide attempt. Her ears were pierced, and she was last seen wearing a sweater and jeans, possibly along with a t-shirt and jacket. If she is still alive today, she would be 59 years old. Anyone with information about her case is encouraged to contact the Kettering Police Department at 937-296-2555. Moving on to the next case. Mary Maroney. Born on May 9, 1928, was the joy of her parents' lives. Michael and Catherine Maroney married at a young age. Catherine was only 13. By the time she reached 17, they had 2 daughters, 2-year-old Mary and 11-month-old Anastasia. Residing at 5200 Wentworth Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, the family struggled with poverty. Michael earned approximately $15 a week, which is equivalent to about $224 today. A relative of Catherine's reached out to the Needy Family Services, a newspaper column where individuals could request financial aid. Typically, the column did not publish home addresses, but due to an error, the couple's address was exposed. This mistake caught the attention of a woman who saw an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. On May 14, 1930, an unidentified woman arrived at their doorstep. There are two commonly reported versions of what the woman told Catherine. In one, she claimed to be a social worker sent to assess their situation, while in the other, she stated that she was acting on behalf of a social worker named Mrs. Henderson. Witnesses described her as a well-dressed young woman, approximately 22 years old, with prominent teeth and a refined manner of speaking. She introduced herself as Julia Otis and even provided the couple with some basic groceries at no cost. After hearing about their struggles, Julia proposed taking Mary with her to California for a short period. She assured them that upon her return, Mary would be transformed and, in her words, fat as a butterball. However, Catherine rejected the idea. Before leaving, Julia gave the couple $12 and promised to return. True to her word, she showed up again the next day. This time, she had baby clothes as Catherine was 7 months pregnant with the couple's third child. The young woman said she'd arranged for Michael to get a better job and this time offered to take Mary shopping for clothes and shoes at a nearby store. Eventually, Catherine agreed. Mary reportedly cried and refused to go, but was taken anyway. Neither Mary nor Julia Otis ever came back. The next day, the Marones received a letter from the mysterious woman. It read as follows: "Please don't be alarmed. I have taken your little girl to California with me. I have hired a special nurse to care for her. We'll be back in 2 months. By that time, you will be on your feet again and will be able to care for her." She didn't even cry a bit. She's outfitted like a princess. In the meantime, I'll help all I can to get you on your feet. Don't worry about her or anything else. When you get this letter, we'll be on our way already. As ever, Julia Otis. The letter was written on stationery from a Chicago store, and witnesses believed they saw Julia with Mary as she dictated the notes to a store employee. She also apparently paid for Mary's clothing with a $50 note, which was a lot of money during this time period. This has led to much online speculation that she was a member of a black market adoption ring. The letter did not help put the couple at ease. And despite the promises that Julia made, Michael and Catherine never saw their eldest daughter again. This was also the last time Julia ever contacted the family, and she did nothing to provide them with further aid. 2 weeks later, a woman named Alice Henderson sent a letter to the couple claiming that Julia was her cousin and she was love-hungry from losing her husband and baby the year before. She added that their baby would be returned to them safe and sound. However, as with Julia, Alice was never heard from again. Authorities noted that both of the letter writers shared the same handwriting. Leads in the investigation were sparse. In July of 1931, an elderly Native American woman named Martha Thompson was found pushing a cart which contained a blonde-haired, blue-eyed 3-year-old girl matching Mary's description. Martha claimed that the girl was abandoned by her mother, a woman named Florence Fuller, and begged to be allowed to keep her. At first, investigators were hopeful, but the Maroneys ultimately did not recognize the young girl as their missing daughter. Then, in 1952, a 24-year-old housewife from California came forward, believing she might be the lost Maroney child after her husband noticed striking similarities. Mary McKellen had been adopted by Charles and Nova Beck in 1930. She shared similar dental features, body and skull measurements, blood type, and prints with the Maroneys. However, she lacked a scar from a childhood operation that Mary had undergone. The highly publicized reunion between Mary McKellen and the Maroney family raised hopes of a resolution. Catherine and Michael accepted her as their daughter, but DNA testing after her death in February 2005 confirmed she was not Mary Maroney. Following their daughter's disappearance, Michael and Catherine had 6 more children, 1 daughter and 5 sons, but the loss of their firstborn left a void that could never truly be filled. It has now been 90 years since Mary Maroney vanished, and her fate remains a mystery. While a resolution seems unlikely, we can still hope that one day, even the smallest piece of evidence will emerge to finally reveal what happened to her. Moving on to the next case. Sonia Carmen Herrick. In 1981, Sonia was a 30-year-old single mother living with her 4-year-old daughter in Monterey County, California. She worked as a merchandiser and sales representative for Levi Strauss & Company. On October 15, 1981, Sonia's friend, Caroline McBride, arrived at her home and knocked on the door. When there was no response, McBride let herself in. Inside, she made a shocking discovery. Sonia's partially clothed body was sprawled on the living room floor. She had been strangled using a pair of pantyhose. Investigators collected several pieces of DNA evidence from the crime scene, preserving them for future analysis. To piece together what had happened, authorities constructed a timeline of the crime. They concluded that Sonia had likely been killed while her young daughter was at school. Her body was discovered around noon. Soon after the crime took place, a man told investigators that he had a friend who admitted to being inside Sonia's house the morning that her life was taken. The friend's name is Michael Glazebrook, Sonia's neighbor. A day after the crime occurred, investigators decided to interview him. They saw that he had a scratch on his face and was extremely nervous. On December 18 of 1981, he was arrested in connection to the case. In 1983, he was tried, but the jury could not agree on his innocence or guilt. Prosecutors dropped the case following a mistrial. In the early 1980s, DNA evidence was a long way off. Blood was found under Sonia's fingernails, but lab technicians could only tell that it did not belong to her. In February 2020, investigators decided to re-examine the case. The DNA evidence collected in 1981 was re-examined using modern forensic techniques, allowing investigators to develop a complete DNA profile. Still convinced that Michael Glazebrook was involved, authorities obtained a DNA sample from him. After further testing, it was officially confirmed that Glazebrook was responsible for Sonia's murder. In February, 65-year-old Glazebrook was arrested at his home in Seaside, California. Disturbingly, he had been working as a school bus driver. He was booked into the Monterey County Jail, where he was held on a $1 million bail. Glazebrook was convicted of the crime in February, and his sentencing is scheduled for April 26. He faces a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Moving on to the next case. Tina Fales murder case. In April 1984, Tina Fales was making her way home from school in Pleasanton, California, but tragedy struck, and her family never saw her again. Nearly 3 decades would pass before DNA evidence provided a breakthrough in the case. On April 5, 1984, Tina chose to walk home from Foothill High School instead of taking the bus, as she had been dealing with bullying from other students. The 14-year-old decided to take a shortcut to her home in the Valley Trails neighborhood. Sadly, she never made it. Her body was later discovered in a drainage culvert near Highway 680, having suffered 44 stab wounds from a kitchen knife. Despite extensive efforts from law enforcement, no strong suspects emerged, and the case eventually went cold. It wasn't until February 2011 that investigators finally caught a break when DNA evidence from the crime scene linked to a man already in prison, Stephen Carlson. At the time of the crime, Carlson had been 16 years old and a fellow student at Foothill High School. He was convicted in February 2014 but continued to insist he was innocent. Initially, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 26 years to life. However, in February 2017, the First District Court of Appeal in San Francisco reduced his conviction to second-degree murder, cutting 10 years from his sentence. Finally, in 2020, as he approached his first parole hearing, Carlson wrote 3 letters admitting guilt. Of the 3 letters, one is a 9-page insight statement written for state parole commissioners. One is to Tina's family, and one is to his victim, Tina. One of the letters said, "I want you to know you and your family did absolutely nothing to deserve what I did to you." The letter went on explaining that he was acting out of drunken rage from having been bullied as well at school after he attempted to throw a party at his house while his parents were out of town. Carlson said that he did not plan to commit slaying that day, but was overcome when he saw Tina walking home from school in the field across the street from his house. In the letter, he admits to stabbing his younger classmate with a kitchen knife 44 times. Carlson wrote, I remember being full of rage at the way all my classmates were laughing at me and the damage my parents' room was in, and how my dad was going to whip up on me after they found out about the party I threw. Everything happened so fast. I remember going to the kitchen and grabbed a butcher knife. I walked across the street into the field at the gully where Tina was. He also wrote, you were just minding your own business. Having to walk home by yourself and have to walk through that scary drainage tunnel could have also been terrifying to a 14-year-old girl. But only to be horrifically surprised by me attacking and brutally stabbing you. Carlson said that he does not remember the stabbing motions. He just remembers standing over her bloody body holding a bloody knife. According to Joshua Sukan, a multimedia journalist, Carlson got bullied, but he was also a major bully himself. Joshua also attended Foothill High School shortly after the slaying. He said that the kids in the area always suspected the boy they called Creepy Carlson as the suspect. They were not surprised when he was finally arrested. Joshua and Drew, Tina's brother, both wondered why Carlson confessed after 36 years. Joshua said there is a number of reasons why he penned these letters. It might be because he wants to get released earlier and wants to suck up to the parole board. It might be that he is maybe trying to clear his conscience. I am not going to pretend like I know. After writing the letters, Carlson canceled his own parole hearing. No one is sure why, but Drew believes it is all part of a plan to influence future attempts at release. Drew said, definitely a strategy. There is no remorse. None at all. If that were truly the case, he could have confessed in the courtroom, Drew said. Instead, he waited until his parole hearing to reveal the truth. Why did he wait 5.5 years? While Drew is relieved to finally know who was responsible for his sister's horrific murder, he admits that it doesn't bring closure. Reflecting on that painful time, he shared, I remember that day like it was yesterday. My mom would sit outside my bedroom door so I could fall asleep. I was just 8 years old, and we didn't know who had done it. I didn't know if I was next. Stephen Carlson remains incarcerated at the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi as he awaits his next parole hearing. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.